So the question is, what's the most powerful number in UK property that you need to watch out for, and how does that impact your journey in property? In the world of property investment, and actually most investments, there is one single number that you need to watch out for, you need to be able to measure, and you need to understand how it works depending on the financial models that investment has. And that number is cash flow. Now, you might say you need to look at ROI, which is return on investment, or ROCE, which is return on capital employed. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But for me personally, you win this game by watching and increasing your cash flow, making every single investment, every single property create more and more cash flow. Now, of course, return on investment is very important to evaluate if a deal in property or property compared to other investments is a good option for your money. But at the end of the day, what's going to give you the freedom that you're looking for in the long term or short term is cash flow. Now, there are other numbers, as I said. Return on capital employed, for example, is the one that what we call in this industry, what I call and my colleagues call, is the money that you leave in the deal. For example, when you invest in a buy-to-let, pretty much all the money that you put in stays there. But if you invest in advanced strategies like HMOs refurbishment or commercial to residential conversion, there is a chance that you will increase value, and then once you refinance at the end of the project, you're going to take a very good amount of the money out, and then you will leave just a fraction of the capital that you utilize to begin with. And that's where in these strategies, the capital employed is less than, for example, in a buy-to-let. Just to give you numbers on an example, in the investments that we've done so far, we've been able, through increasing value, we've been able to buy a property. Again, at the end of the process, when you buy the property which needs refurbishment and you go through the whole process of increasing value and getting licenses, you can get, in Liverpool or Wirral, you can get a property, 6-bed, 6-bath property for about K. Again, but this is not to tell you like you can go to the open market and get that sort of property newly refurbished with all those characteristics at that value. Not, you need to know and you need to build that sort of asset for yourself. It's very different than if you buy a property as a buy-to-let, which you can get from something that's a good deal from 80, 90 and thereon, but the money employed there, you would have to put, let's say, £1,000 for a property that might have 3 rooms and 1 bath, is not as profitable as the one I first mentioned. And that's why when you get so good at property that you can generate capital gains and cash flow, so you can create a self-funding machine for property investment, then that's when things start accelerating. But you as an investor need to understand the concept of cash flow. Now, what is cash flow? Cash flow is, in simple terms, is the income that each property is generating minus all the expenses, including taxes at the end of the day, how you're going to extract that money. And once you have a portfolio of properties, that cash flow is what is going to give you your freedom, is going to fit your lifestyle if you know how to do it. Now, the big goal that you need to have in terms of this cash flow is what it leads me to my next point, which is the definition of rich. Many people want to be rich, but if you ask them, they think having £1 million in their account is going to make them rich, but that's not the case. You need to have a definition. You need to understand what that really is. And personally, my definition of being rich is to have at least 2 times your expenses through passive income or income that's as passive as possible. Why? Because at that point, you can cover all your expenses through that income, not needing a 9 to 5 job. But if you don't measure your cash flow, if you don't measure your expenses, and you don't realize, you don't have this definition of rich, then you're never going to get there. Now, when you really are working towards a very good lifestyle, I would say you need to go for at least 20 times your expenses cash flow, in passive income cash flow. And at that point, you have all the freedom that you can have, and then you are protected, not 100% because nothing is guaranteed, but you have protection from the variation of income that properties have. So a property never has 100% occupation. It changes, goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down. And therefore, the way to protect yourself from that variation is to have multiple properties. But again, we've talked about cash flow and how that's the most important number. We've talked about the rich definition, how you need to measure that, how you need to ensure that you calculate your income, your outcome, not only per property, but also a global number that you can understand for you to know every month where you are in terms of your dreams. If you have a dream, better to find a way to measure that dream so you know if you're close enough to reach it. And then you know where to stop or when to continue working. Now, this takes me to my third concept. What I just described in terms of knowing how to manage or measure your expenses and your income is to do with something that you might have heard of, but you might not have been taught to use, which is financial statements. The way this works is the way any company works. You see, a company normally has bookkeepers and accountants. And what those bookkeepers and accountants do, part of it, is to translate all those activities that you do, income, generating income and generating expenses. They will categorize all those numbers and give you a financial statement, profit and loss, balance sheet, and maybe a cash flow statement. With those numbers, then you can understand how you're doing. You can calculate how good you are in terms of what your passive income is, what your expenses are, and what that ratio is. If you're good enough and if you're serious enough about achieving your financial freedom, then you'll find a way to manage your personal finances correctly, to have, even though if it's a simple financial statement, which will tell you where you are, and from there you can set goals as to what vehicles you're going to use to generate enough cash flow to take you where you need to be. So now that is another very important skill of you as an investor. Now, the fourth skill that you need to now create, knowing the definition of cash flow, knowing the definition of rich and freedom, how you calculate that, understanding your financials statements and having the systems to create them effortlessly every month, which that exists and actually is not that expensive. Now, once you got there, is you need to find those investment vehicles and you need to understand how they work. There are many types of financial vehicles for investment, but regardless of how passive or how simple or complicated people may say they are, you need to become an expert on one of them at a time. It's very difficult to master multiple ones at the same time. And my experience is that you need to work one by one and then become an expert in them. So, for example, investment vehicles could be bonds, could be property, could be shares, could be buying businesses, could be growing and developing businesses. Those are vehicles that you can use, but all of them require education. And the reason you need education is because nobody is going to care about your money as you do. The only one who feels pain when money is lost is the owner. The rest will say, I'm sorry, but they won't feel the pain. And you need to reduce the likelihood of feeling that pain by educating yourself. As part of property cash flow, we are working on something we will be releasing soon, which I want to show you. Is basically a game, board game, electronic one, but that's going to help you understand all these concepts in a way that you can play against the computer and you can learn very important concepts of property investment, concepts of cash flow, and especially is going to help you simulate your journey towards your financial freedom, towards that goal that you have. So let me show you how it works, and you need to stay tuned for when this game is available to play online. But let me show you for a second how it's going to work. So as you can see here, this game is going to be very simple to play, but it's kind of Monopoly, but it's not, because it's got very special information and is specially designed to work with the rules of UK property investment. And the reason I wanted to create this is very simple, because you as an investor need to feel how everything works together, how everything clicks together. And the best way is to play this game. The more you play this game, the more you're going to understand how the whole process works. And just let me show you a second. So the goal of this game is going to be for you, through your investments that you achieve here, to create £10,000 of monthly income, which is, if you ask people on average, that's kind of what they're going to say. They would be quite happy with £10,000 recurrent passive income. But you need to be really good to get to generate that sort of money. It's very difficult to create your first £10,000 in passive income, and from then on, it just becomes easier and easier. Now, how you're going to use this game? You're going to start clicking on roll the dice, and the system is going to start moving. You are the one here. At this right moment, I stepped on a penalty card, which is pay a fine because of Japanese Knotweed. Now, right there, I started learning about this. If you don't know that concept, you don't know what Japanese Knotweed is, now you go and look it up and understand. You started learning already. Now I'm going to pay the fine. And what the system is doing now is the computer is playing, and the computer, and you start with £800 as cash flow monthly. That's from your 9-to-5 job. And then what you need to do is you need to keep playing and learning and understanding. In this case, look what I got. I got a rent-to-rent opportunity. I need to put an upfront investment of £10,000. It's going to have a gross monthly profit, a ROI of 66%. And then I have available capital for this. Yes, I have £21,000, so I could buy it. And after that, my projected income is going to be 135. So I can secure the deal. Definitely. And then I continue working against the computer. The computer now is behind. I'm winning, but that's what it is. So next, let's see what we learn more. I'm not going to spend all my time here, but let's see what else we did. Now, there is a new investment opportunity, but the problem, again, you keep learning here. This is an unlicensed HMO. The price is 200,000. And this is a high risk because you're going to buy something which has no license, and you have available capital of £13,000 and you require 50,000, right? So what you could choose is to make a loan, get a loan from the bank, but then you need to understand that these loans are quite expensive and those would affect your cash flow. So the system is effectively telling us, if you buy this property and you enter a loan on top of the normal loan that you would get for this, then your cash flow is going to be minus 600. And this is something very important to understand, because many people I talk to, they would say, what about, I have £30,000, no? And what if I use those £30,000 and then I get an additional loan, a personal loan, to complete the money that I need for that property? The problem is exactly this, what you're seeing on the screen, which is you need to look at your global cash flow and understand that if you go negative, it's not good. Never enter a deal in property which will generate negative cash flow. I mean, you can have as many properties as you can with positive cash flow, even £100, but you should never enter one that's going to give you in the long term negative cash flow. Now, a property you're refurbishing, yes, is going to give you negative cash flow, but you should have the funds to go and do the refurbishment, then rent it and turn it into an asset, because in the meantime, it's going to be a liability. But that's something for people to understand. For you to win this game, you need to watch your cash flow, and then you need to watch the cash flow of each property that you buy. Now, on this occasion, I'm going to pass because it's no point. I'm going to go broke. And the other thing about this game is that if your cash flow goes negative and you don't have enough capital, enough cash, you're going to lose the game because you're going to go bankrupt. So effectively, it's incredibly powerful, this game, for you to understand all the financial implications. Now, here, there is another rent-to-rent opportunity, which I can go and secure the deal and then carry on and understand the deal. So at the moment, what I have here in the process, the computer just played, is I have two rent-to-rent properties in basically areas with no restriction. Now, that's another part of the game, which is in UK property investment, there are areas with restrictions, and here we have them as green. Then we have blue, which will require licensing. We have red, and for example, conservation areas for certain investments is a red not go zone. And then you have yellow, which is, for example, here's Article 4, which you will learn more about that as you go through the game. But then the question is, if you play this game, or can you play this game well enough to be able to create £10,000 of income, monthly income from property, and in the meantime, make all the decisions correctly that you need to do to get there. That's the game we are going to release soon, but hopefully you understand the concepts behind it, because it's nothing, I found in my experience, nothing more powerful than being able to see in advance, to feel in advance like you're achieving the goal that you are pursuing. And this game is one of the most powerful ways to do that. So stay tuned, because it will be released very soon.